It was no bigger than a thumb, trembling, gasping, and barely alive. When a volunteer found the tiny creature inside a soggy cardboard box outside the shelter, everyone thought it wouldn't make it through the night. But when the vet lifted the little puppy into his palm, he froze. Its heartbeat was strange. Its fur shimmered under the light, and its eyes opened far too soon. This can't be real," he whispered. What started as a routine rescue became a mystery that left doctors speechless and the world in tears. And when the vet realized the truth behind his sighs, he burst into tears. What the doctor discovered left everyone speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the shelter's roof like 1,000 anxious heartbeats. Most of the lights were off. It was closing time. Only a single volunteer, Emily, remained, mopping the floor and humming softly to keep herself company. Just as she was about to leave, a faint, broken sound reached her ears. At first, she thought it was the wind slipping through the doorframe. But then she heard it again, weak, desperate, almost like a cry for help. Her mop clattered to the floor as she followed the noise toward the entrance. The night outside was cold, the kind that seeps into your bones. A flash of lightning illuminated the steps, and there, half hidden under the shelter's awning, sat a soggy cardboard box. Rainwater dripped from its edges. Something inside was moving, barely. Emily hesitated for a moment, then crouched and peeled open the flap. What she saw made her heart stop. Inside lay the tiniest creature she had ever seen. A puppy, but impossibly small, no bigger than her thumb. Its fur was matted, its eyes barely open, its chest rising in fragile, uneven breaths. She gasped, cupping it gently in her hands. The puppy's body was cold as ice, trembling uncontrollably. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You poor thing." Holding the fragile life close to her chest, Emily rushed back inside. She grabbed a towel, a heating pad, anything she could find to warm it up. The puppy let out a faint whimper, so weak it was almost a sigh. Its tiny paw rested against her finger, a gesture so small yet so full of trust that it broke her heart. She knew she couldn't handle this alone. Snatching her phone, she called Dr. Harris, the shelter's on-call veterinarian. "Doctor, it's urgent," she said, her voice shaking. "I found something outside in a puppy, but it's not normal. You have to see it." Within minutes, headlights pierced through the storm. Dr. Harris burst into the shelter, still wearing his raincoat. When Emily placed the puppy in his palm, his expression changed instantly, from curiosity to disbelief. "This can't be real," he murmured. "It's smaller than a mouse." As thunder rumbled in the distance, the vet looked up at Emily, his face pale. "Get the incubator ready," he ordered. "We're running out of time." And just like that, the storm outside no longer mattered. Because inside that small shelter, in the warmth of trembling hands, a miracle had just begun to fight for its first breath. Dr. Harris gently placed the tiny creature on a clean white towel under the warm glow of the exam lamp. Emily stood beside him, her hands trembling, still dripping rainwater. The storm outside roared, but inside the clinic, there was only the faint sound of the puppy's labored breathing. Dr. Harris leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he examined it through his magnifying glasses. For a moment he didn't speak. He simply stared, his expression shifting from focus to disbelief. "This can't be right," he murmured. "Emily, look at this." He pointed to the puppy's chest where its heartbeat fluttered too fast like a hummingbird trapped inside. Its ribs were paper-thin. Its fur glimmered faintly under the light, not wet but almost reflective, as if each strand caught and refracted light like glass. Emily's eyes widened. "Is that normal?" she whispered. Dr. Harris shook his head slowly. "No, it's not normal at all." He reached for his stethoscope and listened carefully, his brow furrowing deeper. "The heart rhythm is irregular. 3 beats, then a pause, then 5 more. It's not consistent with any mammal I've ever heard." He moved to his desk and grabbed a small medical scale. Emily held her breath as he placed the puppy on it. The screen flickered before showing the weight, 0.9 ounces. Dr. Harris blinked twice. "That's impossible," he muttered. "A living puppy this small shouldn't exist." "It should have. It shouldn't have survived birth." He ran a tiny blood test, inserting a droplet into the analyzer. The machine hummed, lights blinking. When the results appeared, Dr. Harris froze again. "Its hemoglobin count is off the charts. And its temperature regulation doesn't make sense. He turned toward Emily, his voice low. It's like its biology isn't built for this world. Emily looked down at the fragile creature now wrapped in gauze. Its blue eyes blinked weakly, and for the briefest moment it let out a soft, pitiful squeak. So small yet piercingly human in emotion. Something stirred in both of them, a feeling of awe and dread intertwined. Dr. Harris sighed, rubbing his temple. I've worked with thousands of animals, but this... He paused, his eyes fixed on the trembling life before him. This isn't just rare, it's unexplainable. The lights flickered as thunder boomed overhead. Emily shivered, watching the vet gently cradle the puppy in his hand again. Somewhere deep inside, they both felt it. This was no ordinary rescue. Something extraordinary, maybe even unnatural, had just entered their world. The storm outside grew harsher, its thunder echoing through the walls as Dr. Harris worked with trembling focus. The little creature's heartbeat was fading, its breath shallow and uneven. Come on, little one. Stay with me, he whispered, adjusting the oxygen flow on the incubator. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain. Emily stood beside him, clutching a towel, her face pale with worry. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown to something inevitable. Dr. Harris placed the puppy carefully inside a miniature incubator, usually reserved for premature kittens. The soft orange glow bathed its fragile body in warmth. He adjusted the temperature 1 degree higher. If its body can't hold heat, we have to become its heartbeat, he said softly, almost to himself. Emily fetched every tool he called for. Tiny syringes, cotton swabs, electrolyte drops. The vet's hands moved with precision, but behind that calm exterior was pure panic. He had seen countless emergencies, but this was different. The puppy wasn't just weak, it was collapsing from the inside. Pulse dropping, Dr. Harris murmured, watching the monitor. He reached for a microsyringe and injected a drop of glucose directly into the pup's vein. The vein was so thin he had to use a magnifier. A bead of sweat ran down his temple as the needle found its mark. Good, good, he breathed, his voice cracking. Emily stood frozen. Is he going to make it? She whispered. Dr. Harris didn't look up. I don't know, but we're not giving up. For a long moment there was silence, only the ticking of the clock and the rhythmic hum of the oxygen pump. Then just as hope began to fade, the puppy's chest gave a stronger rise. Once, twice. Its tiny mouth opened as it let out the faintest cry. Emily gasped. He's breathing. Dr. Harris smiled weakly, relief washing over his face. That's it, little fighter. Don't stop now. He gently stroked the puppy's head with a gloved fingertip, careful not to hurt it. The creature's tail twitched, the smallest sign of defiance against the odds. They stayed that way for hours, monitoring every flicker on the screen. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, the world seeming to pause in respect for the tiny miracle unfolding inside the clinic. Finally, when dawn began to break, Dr. Harris leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The puppy's vitals had stabilized for now. He exhaled slowly, his voice a whisper of gratitude. He's still here, but in the depths of his heart he knew the battle had only just begun. By morning the clinic had fallen quiet. The storm had passed, leaving behind a misty calm that wrapped the world in silence. Inside, Dr. Harris sat at his desk, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. The puppy, now wrapped in a tiny blanket, slept soundly in the incubator beside him. Each faint breath was a victory, but questions filled his mind like shadows creeping through light. He needed answers. This wasn't just an abnormally small dog. Its biology defied every veterinary rule he knew. Picking up a sterile swab, he gently collected a saliva sample. Emily, who had just returned with coffee, watched curiously. You're running a DNA test? She asked. He nodded without looking up. Yes, whatever this little one is, it's not ordinary. I need to know what we're dealing with. The machine whirred softly as the sample began processing. The rhythmic hum filled the room, accompanied by the faint sound of the puppy's breathing. Minutes passed. Emily leaned against the counter, her hands wrapped around her mug. It's crazy, she murmured. Something so small, yet it's fighting like it wants to live more than anything. Dr. Harris smiled faintly. Sometimes the smallest hearts carry the biggest will. Then the computer beeped. The test had finished. Dr. Harris turned to the screen, expecting a standard report. But when the data appeared, his smile vanished. No, this can't be right, Emily frowned. What does it say? He stared at the screen, scrolling through lines of genetic code. It's not matching up, he said quietly. The system can't identify the sample completely. What do you mean it can't identify it? Look, he pointed to the results. Part of the DNA matches a domestic canine, but the other half is blank, undefined. It's like the system doesn't recognize what it's seeing. Emily blinked. You mean it's mixed with something else? Dr. Harris leaned closer to the monitor, his heart pounding. Not just something else, he said slowly. Something unknown. They exchanged a look of disbelief. The room seemed colder suddenly, the morning light filtering through the blinds in thin streaks. The tiny creature stirred in its incubator, letting out a weak whimper as if responding to their fear. Dr. Harris whispered, "What are you?" Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft beeping of the monitor. The vet printed the report and stared at it, feeling both awe and dread. He had expected science to give him clarity. Instead, it had deepened the mystery. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed the truth. This wasn't just a medical anomaly. This little creature might be something the world was never meant to find. The clinic had grown eerily still. Morning sunlight filtered through the rain-streaked windows, glinting off the metal trays and medical instruments. Dr. Harris sat in silence, the printed DNA report still trembling in his hands. The puppy slept peacefully in its incubator, unaware that its existence had just become a mystery too large for comprehension. Emily leaned against the counter, her voice low. "Doctor, do you think someone knew what it was?" He looked up slowly. Someone had to. You don't just abandon something like this by accident. She nodded toward the soggy cardboard box lying near the trash bin. Maybe there's a clue in there. Dr. Harris walked over, the floor creaking beneath his shoes. He picked up the box carefully, noticing faint writing smudged by the rain. He tilted it toward the light. A single word was still visible, written in red ink. Forgive. His stomach tightened, Emily's voice wavered. Forgive? Forgive what? He said nothing. Instead, he reached for his phone. Check the security cameras outside, he said. We need to see who left this. Within minutes, the two huddled over the computer screen in the office, the footage flickering in black and white. At 12:47 a.m., the grainy image showed movement near the shelter gates. A hooded figure appeared, clutching something close to their chest. They moved slowly, nervously, looking around before setting the box down near the entrance. Pause it, Dr. Harris said. Emily froze the frame. The person bent down, hesitated, and then whispered something, inaudible through the grainy footage. After a few seconds, they ran off into the darkness, disappearing beyond the camera's range. Emily frowned. Can we zoom in? Dr. Harris adjusted the feed, zooming on the figure's face, but the hood concealed their features completely. The only visible thing was their hand, shaking violently as if torn between guilt and grief. A thin bracelet gleamed faintly under the light. That's all? Emily asked. Dr. Harris nodded, his eyes heavy. They cared for it, he murmured. Whoever they were. They didn't throw it away. They wanted it to live. Silence lingered for a long moment. Outside, a bird chirped faintly, the first sound of calm after the storm. Emily whispered, Do you think they'll come back? Dr. Harris glanced at the incubator, where the tiny puppy stirred, its paws twitching in sleep. If they do, he said softly, they'll want to know if it survived. But deep inside, something darker stirred within him. The word forgive echoed in his mind like a warning. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, and that whoever had left that box hadn't just abandoned a puppy. They'd left behind a secret. Days turned into nights inside the small clinic, and yet the fragile creature continued to fight. Against every scientific prediction, the puppy was still alive. Dr. Harris had set up a cot in the corner of his office, refusing to leave. Each morning, Emily would find him there, slumped in his chair, eyes red, a coffee cup half empty beside him. The monitors beeped softly, their rhythm steady but delicate like a whisper of hope. Every hour mattered. The puppy's size had barely changed, but its strength was unmistakable. It would lift its tiny head when it heard Emily's voice, and sometimes, when Dr. Harris reached into the incubator to adjust the blanket, the puppy's minuscule paw would cling to his finger, a touch so small it almost didn't seem real. Emily smiled whenever she saw it. He's holding on, she said quietly. He wants to live. Dr. Harris nodded. He's more determined than most full-grown dogs I've treated, he admitted. Whatever's inside him, whatever makes him different, it's also what's keeping him alive. They named him Milo. Somehow it fit, a name that carried both fragility and courage. And day by day, Milo's heartbeat grew stronger. He began responding to sounds, following light with his bright, glassy eyes. The staff started coming by after hours just to see him, each person whispering in disbelief at how such a tiny being could fight so fiercely. But it wasn't easy. Some nights were terrifying, when Milo's breathing would slow or his body would shudder as if he were slipping away. Dr. Harris would sit beside him for hours, whispering softly, "Come on, little one, stay with me." And somehow, he always did. One night, as rain tapped gently on the windows again, Emily sat with Dr. Harris, both watching Milo sleep. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "why he's so strong? What he's fighting for?" Dr. Harris stared at the incubator, lost in thought. "Maybe it's not about fighting for life," he said slowly. "Maybe he's fighting to be seen." Milo stirred at the sound of his voice, letting out a faint whimper as if responding. His tiny chest rose and fell with stubborn rhythm, fragile but defiant. Emily smiled through tears. "Then let's make sure he knows he's not alone." And so they stayed, the tired vet, the hopeful volunteer, and the smallest heartbeat in the world, huddled together in that quiet room. Against logic, against science, against the odds, Milo kept living, and though no one could explain how, everyone could feel it. This little soul wasn't done writing his story yet. The days following Milo's recovery blurred into a quiet rhythm of care and devotion. Dr. Harris had stopped keeping track of time. He no longer saw his clinic as a workplace. It had become a sanctuary, a heartbeat away from the outside world. Every morning he'd wake to the faint beeps of the incubator, stretch his aching back and glance over at the tiny creature who had somehow reshaped his entire life. Milo had begun to respond to him now. When Dr. Harris spoke, the puppy's tiny ears twitched. When he laughed softly, Milo's tail, a short, delicate wisp, gave the smallest flicker. It was enough to melt even the hardest heart. The vet found himself smiling more these days, though he couldn't explain why. Emily noticed it too. One evening she leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, watching him clean the incubator glass. "You talk to him like he understands you," she teased gently. Dr. Harris chuckled, his eyes never leaving Milo. "Who says he doesn't? He's got more fight in him than half the people I know," Emily smiled. But beneath her laughter was something deeper, a warmth, a quiet awe at how this little creature had transformed the man she'd known for years. Dr. Harris had always been kind, but distant, a man shaped by loss and duty. Yet now, with Milo, something inside him had softened. Late at night, when the clinic was empty, he'd pull his chair beside the incubator and read medical journals aloud, as if Milo could learn from the sound of his voice. Sometimes he told stories about the dogs he'd treated, the rescues that had broken his heart. Milo would listen, his bright eyes fixed on him like he understood every word. But the bond ran deeper than words. Dr. Harris had begun to dream about him. Dreams where Milo was running across sunlit fields, strong and free, his small frame glowing with life. He'd wake with tears in his eyes, unsure if they were from hope or fear. One morning, Emily arrived early to find the vet asleep beside the incubator, his hand resting inside, fingers gently curled as if guarding a fragile secret. Milo lay pressed against his palm, breathing softly. The sight made her heart ache. "Doctor," she whispered, placing a blanket over his shoulders, "you're going to wear yourself out." He stirred, opening his tired eyes. "I can rest later," he said softly. "Right now he needs me." And as the sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the two of them, the weary man and the tiny life he refused to give up on, Emily realized something profound. Milo hadn't just been saved by Dr. Harris, he was saving him too. The night was unusually quiet inside the clinic. A soft hum came from the machines, and the faint ticking of the clock marked the stillness between breaths. Dr. Harris sat beside the incubator as always, his notebook open, pen tapping lightly against the page. But tonight felt different. The air was heavy, charged, like the calm before lightning. Milo was sleeping, or so it seemed. His chest rose and fell with slow, steady rhythm. Then, without warning, the monitor beside him flickered. The heart rate spiked sharply, beeping fast, almost panicked. Dr. Harris leaned forward, startled. "Easy, buddy. What's going on?" he whispered. The puppy's eyes snapped open. For a second they glowed faintly, not in a supernatural way, but enough to catch the vet's breath. His pulse quickened. He checked the light reflection, assuming it was the lamp, but the lamp hadn't moved. Then it happened again. The overhead lights dimmed for a fraction of a second. The incubator's temperature monitor blinked. Emily, who was doing paperwork nearby, looked up. "Did you see that?" "Yeah," Dr. Harris said quietly, staring at the machine. "Power surge, maybe." But even as he said it, doubt lingered in his voice. They waited, listening to the faint buzz of electricity settling back into the walls. Milo's tiny form relaxed again, and the monitor steadied. Emily shook her head, forcing a small laugh. "You're starting to make me paranoid." Dr. Harris didn't respond. He flipped open his notebook and scribbled the time down. 9:14 p.m. Abnormal spike in vitals. Electrical fluctuation observed. It was the 4th time this week. The strange occurrences continued. Whenever Milo grew distressed, the machines would glitch. Once, the entire power strip tripped when he cried. Another time, when a staff member raised their voice during a phone call nearby, the incubator light pulsed brighter, as if reacting to emotion. Emily began to notice patterns too. "He responds to people's moods," she said one morning. "When someone's calm, he's calm. When someone's angry, everything in the room changes." Dr. Harris rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "That's impossible. But then again, so is everything else about him." He set up cameras and sensors, documenting every anomaly. Still no rational explanation surfaced. At night, he'd watch the playback, seeing Milo lift his head just before each flicker, as if sensing something unseen. One evening, exhausted, he whispered, "What are you trying to tell us?" The puppy opened his eyes and, for a heartbeat, looked straight into his, steady, intelligent, almost knowing. The lights hummed softly, glowing warmer. Dr. Harris felt a chill crawl up his spine. For the first time, he wasn't sure if Milo was reacting to the world around him, or if the world was reacting to him. By the end of the week, the mystery surrounding Milo had spread beyond the small shelter. Dr. Harris hadn't told anyone outside the clinic, but somehow word had traveled. One morning, as he adjusted Milo's incubator, the doorbell chimed. Emily went to answer it, and a tall woman in a dark coat stepped inside. She carried a sleek metal case and wore an expression that was part curiosity, part disbelief. "Dr. Harris?" she asked. "I'm Dr. Lena Ward, zoologist and genetic biologist. I heard about your unusual patient." Dr. Harris hesitated, eyeing the visitor. "And who told you that?" She smiled faintly. "Let's just say, science has ears in strange places." He studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the examination room. "Follow me." The air inside was warm, quiet, and filled with the steady hum of machines. Lena stepped closer to the incubator, and the moment her gaze fell on Milo, her composure cracked. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes wide with awe. "My God," she whispered, "it's real." Milo stirred as if aware of being observed. His bright, glass-like eyes blinked once, and his tiny paw shifted weakly against the blanket. Lena knelt, staring in silence. "He shouldn't exist," she murmured. "At least, not naturally." Dr. Harris folded his arms. "You've seen something like this before?" "Not exactly," she said. "But I've heard whispers. There were experimental attempts, a few years back. Government-funded labs trying to merge extinct animal genes with modern species. The goal was to create adaptive breeds stronger, faster, immune to disease." She looked up sharply. "Most were failures. All were supposed to be destroyed." Emily's eyes widened. "Destroyed? You mean Milo could be?" Lena nodded gravely. "A survivor, or maybe the only success." Dr. Harris's stomach turned. "That would mean someone brought him here deliberately," Lena finished. "To save him, or to hide him." The room fell silent. Outside, the faint sound of wind rustled through the trees. Lena pulled a small device from her case and scanned Milo gently. Her brows furrowed as readings appeared on the display. "Unbelievable," she muttered. His cells regenerate faster than any canine I've ever studied. It's like his body's rewriting itself every few hours. Dr. Harris stepped closer. What does that mean? She exhaled slowly. It means he's evolving. In real time. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Milo whimpered softly, pressing closer to the warmth. The sound broke the tension, but the unease lingered. Dr. Harris finally whispered, "Whatever he is, someone went too far." Lena looked at him, her voice low. "And now, they'll want him back." The air in the examination room felt heavier than before. Dr. Harris paced near the counter, his mind spinning from everything Lena had said. The idea that Milo wasn't a normal dog, that he might be the result of something engineered, was too much to process. Yet deep down, a part of him had already known. Nothing about this creature had ever been ordinary. Lena stood beside the incubator, reviewing the scan results on her tablet. Her face grew pale as new data appeared, the numbers flickering faster than her system could process. "That can't be right," she whispered. "The genetic mapping, it's showing sequences we don't even use in current animal databases." Dr. Harris frowned. "Meaning what?" She looked up at him slowly. "Meaning, part of his DNA isn't just from another species, it's ancient." Emily froze mid-step. "Ancient? Like how ancient?" Lena turned the screen toward them. The display showed a side-by-side comparison of Milo's genetic sequence with that of various animals. One strand highlighted in glowing red connected to something labeled Canis dirus, the extinct dire wolf. "This species vanished thousands of years ago," she said quietly. "But fragments of its genome match Milo's perfectly." The words hung in the air like thunder. Dr. Harris stepped back, shaking his head. "That's impossible. You're saying this puppy carries genes from a creature that's been extinct since the Ice Age?" "I'm saying," Lena replied softly, "that someone found a way to bring those genes back." Emily covered her mouth in disbelief. "Oh my God, he's not just a rescue, he's a resurrection." Lena nodded gravely. "And that's not all." She zoomed in on another part of the DNA strand. "These segments, see here? They're synthetic. That means someone edited his genome artificially. Milo wasn't born by accident, he was made." Dr. Harris felt his heart sink. His hands trembled as he stared at the tiny sleeping figure. "Why would anyone do this?" Lena hesitated. "If this was part of a government bio-research program, maybe they were trying to engineer the perfect survival species. Strong, adaptive, nearly indestructible." Silence filled the room again. Only the hum of the machines and the soft breaths of the puppy could be heard. Dr. Harris looked at Milo, then at Lena. "So he's part extinct animal, part experiment." Lena's eyes softened. "No, doctor, he's part miracle." And though those words brought a flicker of comfort, none of them could shake the truth that now loomed over them. This wasn't just science. It was a secret someone had tried desperately to bury. And Milo's survival might have just unearthed it. The revelation weighed on Dr. Harris like a storm cloud that refused to pass. The clinic felt smaller now, suffocating under the weight of truth. Lena's discovery had changed everything. Milo was not just a genetic marvel, but a living remnant of something that should have remained extinct. Yet one question echoed in Harris's mind like an unending whisper. Who created him? That night, long after Lena and Emily had gone home, Dr. Harris sat alone in his office. The rain had returned, drumming softly against the windows, a haunting rhythm that matched the thoughts in his head. He turned on his desk lamp and opened an old storage drawer filled with research papers, lab notes, and newspaper clippings. Some dated back years, remnants of a past life he rarely spoke about. One folder caught his eye. It was labeled Project Helios. His hand trembled as he pulled it out. He hadn't seen it since his university days, a classified program that was abruptly shut down after rumors of ethical violations. He had worked on it briefly, years ago, when he was still a young research intern. Back then, the goal of Project Helios had been revolutionary, to revive extinct species using recovered DNA samples. But behind closed doors, whispers circulated that the project's purpose had shifted, that the focus had turned toward weaponization. Creating animals that could survive extreme climates, sense chemical threats, even heal rapidly. Dr. Harris remembered the night he quit. He'd overheard a heated argument between two lead scientists. "You're not reviving nature," one of them had shouted. "You're playing God." The next week, the facility went dark, sealed under federal order. All files, all specimens, destroyed, or so they said. Now, as Harris stared at Milo sleeping peacefully under the incubator's glow, realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. The timing, the genetic coding, the unknown DNA fragments, it all connected. Milo wasn't just similar to the Helios prototypes. He was one of them. Or perhaps, the only one that had survived. His chest tightened. "Someone saved you," he whispered. "Someone from the project. They couldn't let you die." He flipped through the folder again and froze at a faded photo clipped to one corner. A group of scientists standing in front of the Helios lab. There, in the back row, was a familiar Foster, the same woman from the security footage who had left the cardboard box at his shelter. His pulse quickened. She hadn't abandoned Milo out of guilt. She had entrusted him to the only man she believed could protect him, and now, Harris realized, whoever had once run Project Helios might soon realize their creation was still alive. By the next morning, the peaceful hum of the clinic had been replaced by unease. The air felt heavier, charged with invisible tension. Dr. Harris couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. He'd spent the entire night staring. At the photo, the hooded woman from the footage was indeed Dr. Evelyn Ross, one of the lead scientists from Project Helios. If she had brought Milo here, it meant one thing. Someone was still watching. When Lena arrived later that morning, she noticed his expression immediately. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. "Couldn't," he replied. "I know who dropped him off." He handed her the photo. Her eyes widened. Evelyn Ross? She disappeared after the shutdown. People said she fled the country. "Apparently not," Harris muttered. "She wanted Milo safe. But if she's hiding, it's because someone's looking for him." Before Lena could respond, the sound of tires crunching gravel interrupted them. Two black SUVs pulled up outside the shelter. Their tinted windows reflected the pale morning light like dark mirrors. Emily, who was feeding the rescues in the back, peeked through the blinds. "Doctor, you might want to see this." Three men stepped out. Suits, sunglasses, cold expressions. The kind of men who never smiled unless it was rehearsed. One of them flashed a badge the moment the door opened. "Dr. Harris?" "Yes," Harris replied cautiously. The man nodded. "We're with the Department of Genetic Research Oversight. We received information that you're harboring a classified specimen belonging to the government." His tone was polite but sharp, rehearsed. "We'll need to take it into custody immediately." Lena stepped forward. "On what grounds?" He turned toward her. "For national security." Harris's heartbeat thundered in his chest. He positioned himself subtly in front of Milo's incubator. "You can't just walk in and take a living being like property." The man smiled faintly. "With all due respect, Doctor, it is property." He handed Harris a document, stamped, sealed, and suffocatingly official. "Refusal to comply will result in criminal obstruction." Emily's voice quivered. "What are you going to do with him?" The man didn't answer. He simply turned his gaze toward the small, glowing incubator behind Harris. "That depends on what we find." For a moment, no one moved. The room buzzed with silent defiance. Finally, Harris said softly, "You're not taking him." The man's polite expression vanished. "Then I suggest you start saying goodbye." Outside, the engines rumbled softly, waiting. Inside, Dr. Harris knew the truth, and this was no inspection. It was a retrieval, and if they got their hands on Milo, he'd never see daylight again. The air outside had turned icy by nightfall. The men in suits had left hours ago, but their warning lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Dr. Harris had stood in silence long after the engines faded, staring at the papers they'd left behind. Every line of legal jargon felt like a countdown. They would return, and next time they wouldn't ask. Lena paced the room anxiously, her arms folded tight. "We can't stay here," she said. "They'll be back by morning with an order and a transport team." Emily looked from her to the tiny incubator. "So what do we do? Just hand him over?" "No," Dr. Harris said firmly. His voice carried a quiet fire that surprised even him. "We're leaving." The room fell silent. He looked at Milo, now sleeping peacefully wrapped in a warm towel, and felt his decision harden. Evelyn trusted me to protect him. I won't fail her. They moved quickly. Emily packed medical supplies, oxygen canisters, nutrient syringes, the portable incubator, while Lena gathered every document, report, and genetic file they had. Outside, the rain began to fall again, cloaking the night in a veil of sound. It was as if the world itself was trying to hide their escape. By midnight, the shelter was dark except for the glow of the incubator. Dr. Harris lifted it carefully, his hands trembling slightly. "He's stable enough for travel," he whispered. "We'll head north. There's an old animal refuge near the ridge. No one will think to look there." Emily glanced toward the door nervously. "And if they follow?" "Then we make sure they find nothing," Lena said, her tone steely. She smashed Harris's computer hard drive with the heel of her boot. Sparks flew. No records. No evidence. They slipped out the back entrance, hearts pounding. The rain masked their footsteps as they loaded the van. Harris climbed into the passenger seat, holding the incubator close. Milo stirred, letting out a faint whimper. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured. "We're going to keep you safe." As the van pulled away, the lights of the shelter vanished behind them, swallowed by darkness. For the first time, Dr. Harris felt fear twist inside him, not for himself, but for the small, breathing miracle in his arms. Miles down the road, headlights appeared suddenly in the rearview mirror. Lena's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "We've got company." The vehicles behind them accelerated, beams slicing through the fog. Emily gasped. "They found us!" Dr. Harris turned, shielding Milo with his body. "Drive," he said through clenched teeth. "No matter what happens, don't stop." And as thunder rolled above and rain pounded the windshield, the chase began. Science against secrecy, life against control. That night, under the storm's fury, the fight for Milo's freedom truly began. The road stretched ahead like a dark ribbon of uncertainty, winding through the forested hills. Rain hammered against the windshield, blurring the world outside into streaks of silver and shadow. The van's headlights cut through the mist, revealing the narrow path ahead, but behind them, the distant glow of pursuing vehicles flickered like hunting eyes. Lena gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white. "They're closing in," she muttered, pressing harder on the gas. The tires splashed through puddles, skidding dangerously on the slick road. Emily sat in the back, clutching the incubator. "He's crying," she shouted. "Something's wrong with Milo." Dr. Harris spun around, his heart seizing at the sight. The puppy's tiny body was trembling violently. The monitors blinked red, flashing critical in bold letters. No. "Not now," he said, fumbling for his medical kit as the van jolted over a bump. The beeping quickened, then faltered. Milo's breathing grew shallow, his small chest barely moving. Dr. Harris's hand shook as he tried to stabilize the oxygen line. "Pull over," he shouted. "Now!" Lena swerved the van to the side of the deserted road. The tires screeched against gravel before the engine cut off. Rain hammered the roof in chaotic rhythm. Inside, the world shrank to the sound of rapid breathing, mechanical beeps, and the storm's roar. Dr. Harris tore open the emergency kit. "His heart rate's collapsing," he said, voice trembling. "I'm losing him." He grabbed a syringe and filled it with a stimulant, then injected it carefully into Milo's fragile vein. Emily pressed a hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Please, don't let him die." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the monitor let out a single weak beep. Another. And another. "He's fighting," Dr. Harris whispered, but the relief was short-lived. The readings were still erratic, too low, too unstable. Desperation clawed at his chest. Then a thought struck him. Dangerous, irrational, but it might work. "I need to try a blood match," Lena blinked. "You can't mean—" "I do," he interrupted, already pulling out a sterile needle. "If he's part mammal, he can take a small transfusion." "I'll give him mine." Emily's voice broke. "That's insane." Dr. Harris met her eyes, determination burning in his. He's not just an experiment, he's life. He connected the tube, his own blood beginning to flow into the incubator line. The red hue traveled slowly toward Milo's tiny frame. Seconds felt like hours. Then suddenly the monitor steadied. The puppy's chest lifted, weak but sure. Dr. Harris exhaled, collapsing back in his seat. "He's alive," he whispered. Rain streaked down the windows, washing the van in silver tears. For the first time in hours, hope flickered again, fragile but real. Dawn crept slowly over the horizon, painting the drenched landscape in soft shades of gold and gray. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a quiet stillness that felt almost sacred. The van sat parked near a forest clearing, its engine silent, its passengers exhausted. Inside, Dr. Harris leaned against the seat, pale and drained, his arm still bandaged from the transfusion. Emily and Lena sat nearby, their eyes red but hopeful. The faint, rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the air, a fragile symphony of life. Milo was alive. He lay curled in his blanket, breathing steadily, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. When he stirred, opening his glassy blue eyes, the morning light caught his fur, and for a moment it shimmered like sunlight on water. Dr. Harris smiled weakly, tears gathering in his tired eyes. "You did it, little one," he whispered. "You made it through." Lena exhaled deeply, shaking her head in disbelief. "I've seen medical miracles," she said softly, "but this defies everything." Emily smiled through her tears. "Maybe not everything," she said. "Maybe it proves that some things can't be measured by science." They stayed there for hours, watching Milo sleep peacefully, letting the relief wash over them. The fear, the chase, the chaos, it all seemed distant now, like a nightmare fading with the light. Yet deep inside, they all knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something greater. Weeks later, the world would hear their story. Dr. Harris, Lena, and Emily went public, releasing their findings with one goal: to protect Milo. News outlets called it the miracle pup. Scientists debated his origin. Politicians demanded answers. But for millions of people watching across the world, only one thing mattered: he had survived. When asked why he risked everything, Dr. Harris stood before the cameras and said simply, "Because sometimes science forgets that the greatest discoveries aren't found in labs, they're found in compassion." The crowd went silent. His voice trembled as he added, "This little life reminded me that the purpose of creation isn't control, it's care." He wasn't made to be studied or caged. He was made to live. In time, Milo grew stronger. He learned to walk, then to run. Children visited the shelter just to see him, tiny, radiant, and full of life. People said he had a presence that made them feel calm, as if his very existence carried a quiet message of hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dr. Harris watched Milo play in the grass. He smiled, whispering the words that had guided him through it all. "You weren't a mistake, Milo, you were a message. That life, no matter how small, always finds a way." And somewhere in that gentle breeze, the world seemed to agree.